Hello everybody, Happy New Year. Welcome to Story Time from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. The story we have for you today is a very old story. It comes from the legends of King Arthur in England, and this is the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Once long ago in Arthur's time, King Arthur and all of his knights were having a grand holiday feast, for it was Christmas time, and they had been feasting for several days, and now it was New Year's Eve. And King Arthur and Queen Guinevere had danced and led the court in all of the courtly dances, and now it was time for the feast. And as they went to sit down at the feast, Arthur said, "You know, I should like to hear a story of brave deeds. Has anyone a story of brave deeds before we sit down to supper?" And no one jumped up immediately, but there was no need, for just as King Arthur was finished calling out these words to the room at large, suddenly, in through the door, right into the great hall, rode a large man on a horse. Most people do not ride horses into great halls, so everyone was quite astonished at this. And the moment they stopped being astonished that someone was riding a horse in, they became more astonished, for they could see in front of them that this man was much larger than the average man, and, moreover, he was green. All of him was green. His skin, his arms, his hands, his hair, his clothes were all green. His armor was all green with emeralds set all over it. His horse was not green, but it had green trappings, green cloths laid over it. The saddle on its back was of green leather. The bridle and the halter all were green, and braided into the horse's mane and tail were green silk ribbons. It was quite an odd sight. Well, this strange green knight came riding up to the high table, and he stopped his horse just in front of it, and he called out, "Which of you is the king here?" Well, as soon as Arthur had gotten over his surprise, I am the king, I am King Arthur. "Welcome to our hall, friend. Won't you join us for the feast?" And the knight said, "I do not think so, good king, for you see, I am here to challenge your knights. One of them must sustain this challenge. I challenge one of your knights to accept a blow from me, and they will give a blow back to me. Today, just now, New Year's Eve, I will bow my neck and I will take the strongest blow that any of your knights can render. And then in 1 year and a day, on New Year's Day, they must come to me at the Green Chapel and take the strongest blow I can render them." Well, there was utter silence when this was spoken, for every knight there knew that to take a blow and to give a blow generally meant that someone was going to die along the way, and none of them were quite sure what this man meant by it. Well, the Green Knight looked about at all of them standing there staring at him. He said, "Are you all such cowards then that you will not take my blow or give me a blow? I should have thought that the knights of King Arthur would be stronger. The tales I have told say so." Well, Arthur was not pleased to hear that, and he stood up and he said, "Now see here, we are not cowards. None of my knights nor I are cowards. I will take your challenge." But then a younger knight at the end of the table stood up and he said, "I pray you, your majesty, I am quite one of your youngest knights, and I should very much like to take on this challenge, for I have not yet had the chance to prove my worth and myself as a knight." Well, this young knight was Sir Gawain. He was indeed one of the youngest of King Arthur's knights, and he hadn't really had a chance to fight much, for he had just been made a knight not long before that. And so Arthur said, "Well then, Gawain, Good, good, Sir Gawain. Sir Gawain, the Green Knight. Green Knight, Sir Gawain. Sir Gawain shall take your challenge. And so the Green Knight reached in his belt, and he brought out a great, big battle axe. And he handed it to Sir Gawain, and Sir Gawain found it quite heavy, but he could still lift it, for he was a knight, and he had been training, and he was strong. And the Green Knight knelt down on the ground, and he took off his helmet, and he bowed his head. "Strike your blow, Sir Gawain," he said. And so Sir Gawain took that axe, and he raised it up in the air, and he struck the hardest blow he could, and the axe was so sharp that it cut the Green Knight's head right off, and the Green Knight's head rolled across the floor, and the blood spurted onto the cobblestones. But much to everyone's surprise, the Green Knight did not topple and fall, as most would expect when you cut off a head. Instead, he stood up and he walked over to his head. He picked it up and he put it under his arm, and then he came back to Sir Gawain and he took his axe, stuck it back in his belt, and mounted his horse. And the whole time he did this, the head was watching Sir Gawain. And as the Green Knight got onto his horse, the head spoke and it said, "Now, Sir Gawain, I have stood your challenge. Do you stand mine? Come to the Green Chapel 1 year and 1 day from today on New Year's Day, and take my blow, or I shall call you all cowards." Well, couldn't have that. And at that moment the Green Knight turned and he rode out of the castle. Well, everyone in Camelot was quite astonished by all of this. But it was the Christmas season, and so they finished their feast, and several months of the next year went by, and when it came to be about October or November, Sir Gawain declared that he must leave soon and find the Green Chapel, for no matter how many people they had asked during the previous year, no one knew where it was, and Gawain knew that he had to be at the Green Chapel on New Year's Day, and so he did not have long, and he would have to travel the length and breadth of the kingdom to find the Green Chapel. Well, no one at court was very happy to see Gawain leave, for they did not think they would ever see him again. For the Green Knight was clearly magic to be able to pick up his head and ride off with it. Most human beings cannot do that. And so they did not think they would ever see Gawain again. And so he said a sad farewell to King Arthur and Queen Guinevere and all of his brother knights. And the next morning, very early, he called for his horse and his armor, and the squires came and they helped him to put on all of his armor. It was decorated in gold and it was very strong. The leg irons and the breastplate and the arm guards and his cuirass around his neck, and then his helmet. And then his sword and his shield were hung on his saddle as he climbed up into the saddle and he rode out. Now, that particular winter was very, very cold and very, very bitter. So as Gawain rode across the countryside, people recognized his armor and the markings on his shield, and people would challenge him, trolls and ogres and giants and other knights, and he was constantly being challenged to fight. But worse than all of the challenges, for he had trained for those, was the bitter, bitter cold. Some nights he couldn't find anyone, no houses, no barns in which to take shelter, and so he would have to roll himself in his blankets and sleep out in the cold. Well, I don't know about you, but if you've ever carried something metal outside and let it sit there for a little while and then tried to pick it up, it's quite cold. And so when Gawain would be challenged, he would have to pick up his shield that was very cold from all of that cold weather, and then his sword, which was also very cold, and he would have to fight. In his clothing got wet, and it stuck to him and froze to his skin, and his armor got dented. It was still functional, but it was dented, and it was so cold to sleep in. Well, finally, on Christmas Eve, as Gawain was still looking for someone who could tell him where the Green Chapel was, he came out of the woods and he saw before him a magnificent castle with brightly colored banners flying from the turrets, and flags and hangings on the outside of the castle, for it was decorated for Christmas. Well, Sir Gawain rode up, and he called out to the porter at the gate, and he said, "Could you please inquire of the lord of this castle if I could perhaps stay the night here?" For he thought it would be very nice to stay in a warm castle, and somewhere that was out of the cold and the wet and the wind. Well, the lord of the castle came to greet Sir Gawain, and he introduced himself, and he said, "I am Sir Bersilac, and this is my wife, and we would be glad to have you here in the castle with us for the Christmas season." So Sir Gawain came in, and he stayed with them for a couple of nights. And Sir Bersilac was a very jolly host. He had feasts, and they had games, and they laughed, and they talked, and there was some dancing, and things of that nature. And Sir Bersilac's wife was a very beautiful young woman, and she liked to watch Sir Gawain out of the corner of her eye or from under lowered eyelids, for he was rather good-looking himself. Well, at the end of 2 or 3 days, when Sir Gawain felt that he was recovered from all of the terrible cold and everything, Sir Bersilac asked him to stay on, and he said, "Well, I am sorry, but I cannot, for you see, I must find the Green Chapel before New Year's Eve." "Oh, well, that is not a problem," said Sir Bersilac, "for the Green Chapel is less than 2 miles from here. What are you doing there?" And so Sir Gawain explained the whole story of the Green Knight. And Sir Bersilac said, Sir Gawain, the Green Knight is a formidable enemy. I think you should stay here. Now, I have planned to go hunting with my knights and my friends for the next 3 days. But I do not think I shall ask you to join me, for if you are going to fight the Green Knight, you are going to need your rest. So I suggest you stay here in the castle, sleep as late as you need to, as late as you can, and take it easy. Have very nice, quiet days and rest, for you are going to need your rest when you go to fight the Green Knight. And so Sir Gawain did as Sir Bersilac suggested. The next morning at dawn, Sir Bersilac and all of his men rode out on the hunt. But Sir Gawain slept until nearly midday. And as it was nearing noon, Sir Gawain was sleeping rather lightly, and he heard a little noise. And so he opened his eyes just a little bit, for he was a knight, and he was used to danger coming at him at any time. And when he opened his eyes just a little bit, much to his astonishment, he found that Sir Bersilac's wife had come into his bedroom. And she came over, and she sat on the side of the bed, and she watched him sleep. Well, after a while, Sir Gawain realized she was not going to leave, and so he pretended to wake up, and he was very surprised to see her sitting there. And she told him that he was a silly man for sleeping so very late when there were so many wonderful things to be done about the castle. They could go to the gardens and wander there. They could go to the library and look at some of the pictures in the books. They could be entertained by minstrels. They could just walk the walls. There were so many things that he could be doing, and instead he was lying here in his bed. And she was here to entertain him, and she wanted to entertain him, but she couldn't do it if he was sleeping. Well, Sir Gawain spoke with Lady Bersilac for quite some time, and then finally Lady Bersilac said, "Well, I must go and see and make certain that the supper is ready for when Sir Bersilac returns, and I suppose you might wish to get out of that bed sometime today, Sir Gawain. But surely such a noble knight would not let a lady leave his chambers without at least a little kiss?" Well, Sir Gawain was a little embarrassed by that, but, well, he was a noble knight, and it would not be chivalrous to not at least kiss the lady when she had asked for it. And so he reached over and he gave her a little kiss on the cheek, and she laughed gaily, and she got up and she ran out of the room. Now, Sir Bersilac and Sir Gawain had made an agreement Sir Bersilac thought it would be amusing if he went hunting, and when he brought back his catch, he gave it to Sir Gawain, for Sir Gawain could not go hunting. He needed to rest. But he wanted Sir Gawain to give him something in return. And Sir Gawain did not know what he could give him. But Sir Bersilac said, well, I am to go out hunting, and I will give you whatever I win during the day. And while you stay in my castle, how if the end of the day you were to give me what you win during the day? And Sir Gawain had agreed. So when Sir Bersilac returned from the hunt with a magnificent stag and stories of the long chase it had given them through the forest to catch it, he gave it to Sir Gawain. Here you are, Sir Gawain, this is yours, and what have you for me in return? And so Sir Gawain thought for a moment, and then he went up to Sir Bersilac and he gave him a kiss on the cheek. And Sir Bersilac laughed heartily, and so did Sir Gawain. And then they went into supper together, and they had a magnificent supper, and they laughed, and they talked, and they joked, and they drank, and they sang, and then they went to bed. And the next morning at dawn, Sir Bersilac rode out with all of his men to go hunting, and Sir Gawain slept late again. This time, when Lady Bersilac came to his chambers, he was already dressed. But they did not go very far. They just went down to the great hall, and they sat and they talked for a long time. He told Lady Bersilac stories of the court, and all of the wonderful things that they did there, and the beautiful gowns that the ladies wore, and the wonderful feasts and the parties and some of the dances. He taught her a dance or two even. And at the end of the day, Lady Bersilac said, Sir Gawain, you have given me such a wonderful day. I thank you kindly. And she gave him a kiss on the cheek. Well, when Sir Bersilac returned from the hunt, he brought in a magnificent wild boar, and he told such harrowing stories of danger, hunting it down, and how it had tried to gore the dogs and dug up the ground when it got trapped, and it got at the end, and they managed to spear it, and it was a lovely story about a wonderful hunt. And he said, here you are, Sir Gawain, I've got this magnificent boar for you. Now what have you got for me today? And Sir Gawain came up, and he gave Sir Bersilac a kiss on the cheek. Well, they had another grand feast, and they sang, and they danced, and they drank, and they told stories, and they laughed, and they had a wonderful time. And then they went to bed. And the next morning, Sir Bersilac rode off at dawn with his men to go on their final hunt of the year, for now it was New Year's Eve. And Sir Gawain didn't sleep nearly as late as he had the 2 days before, and he got up, and he went down to the great hall, and there Lady Bersilac found him, and she came running up, and she said, ah, Sir Gawain, you are awake already, and she gave him a kiss on the cheek. And she said, excellent, I have so many things I should wish to do with you today. And she took him out, and they took a walk in the gardens, and they walked along the walls, and they talked, and he taught her a few more dances, and they had a wonderful day together. Well, at the end of the day, Lady Bersilac said, ah, Sir Gawain, you've given me such a wonderful day yet again, and so many new things I have learned. She gave him a kiss on the cheek. And she said, won't you stay with us for much longer? Sir Bersilac says you're going to leave us. And he said, well, yes, I must leave, I'm afraid, my lady. She said, well, you will return to us. And he said, well, I do not know if I can. She said, well, perhaps then you will give me a token, something to remember you by. A glove, perhaps? For I should so like to have something of yours, and then I can look at it and remember the wonderful time we've had this week. And he said, alas, lady, I am afraid I have nothing to give you. I left Camelot with naught but my horse, and my saddle, and my armor, and the clothes on my back. I do not have anything worthy of so great a lady. She said, well, then I shall have to give you something. And she took from her finger a golden ring filled with diamonds, and she offered it to him, and he said, oh, no, lady, I am sorry, but I cannot take something so very valuable from you. It would not be right. And she said, well, then, if you will not take something of great value, perhaps you will take my girdle." And she untied from round her waist a green silken belt. And she gave it to him, and she said, "Here, take this. Do not tell my husband about it, for he gave it to me, and I do not know if he would be happy that I give it to you. But anyone who wears this belt shall not come to any great harm." Well, Sir Gawain was not sure about taking the belt, but the lady was so insistent. And then he thought about the fact that tomorrow he was going to have to face the Green Knight and take the Green Knight's blow, and how he had cut off the Green Knight's head, and if he had a girdle that would not allow any harm to befall him, then perhaps he could live through the encounter with the Green Knight upon the morrow. And so he took the girdle and he thanked the lady, and he carefully tucked the girdle underneath his tunic and wrapped it around and tied it around his waist and hid it under his clothes. And when Sir Bersilac returned that night, Sir Gawain came up and he greeted him warmly, and he gave him a kiss on one cheek and then a kiss on the other cheek for the kisses in the morning and the evening that the wife had given him. But he said nothing about the green girdle. And Sir Bersilac said, "Alas, Sir Gawain, I do not have anything good to give you in return, for all we caught today was this," and he brought out an old ratty fox that was half starved, and he threw that on the ground. It was all they had found. But Sir Gawain and Sir Bersilac went to dinner that night, and they had a grand dinner, and they talked, and they danced, and they drank, and they sang, and they had wonderful time. They told jokes and everything. And when it was time to go to bed, Sir Bersilac promised Sir Gawain that in the morning one of his servants would show him the way to the Green Chapel. Well, early in the morning, Sir Gawain got up, and he got dressed in all of his armor, making certain to tuck that green girdle on underneath his armor to possibly, hopefully, protect him from any real harm. And then he got up and he got on his horse, and the servant got on a horse in front of him, and they rode off into the countryside. And they were riding through a forest and down into a ravine, and then the servant stopped his horse and he said, "Sir Gawain, the Green Chapel is just through those trees, but I beg you, do not go. It is not safe. The Green Knight has the strength of 5 men, and he is a giant. You will not survive the encounter, Sir Gawain. Please, come back with me to Sir Bersilac's castle." And Sir Gawain said, "I cannot. I gave my word as a knight that I would meet the Green Knight at the Green Chapel on New Year's Day, and I must continue." And so the servant bid him farewell and turned back for the castle, and Sir Gawain rode on through the trees. Well, as he rode deeper into the ravine, he looked all about him, but he could not see a chapel anywhere. He was looking for a building, and there simply wasn't one. But then he noticed, right in the middle of the ravine, down at its lowest point, there was a little hillock of green, covered in grass, with a door on either end, and he wondered, could this be the Green Chapel? And so he got down off of his horse to go look and see. And just as he was standing at the door, he heard a whirring sound filling the air around him, and he cried out, "Who is there? What is that?" "Stand where you are, Sir Gawain," came the voice of the Green Knight, and up he came, striding over the top of the green mound. "Stand where you are," he called as his axe whirred round his head, "and take your blow." And Sir Gawain said, "I am ready to take that blow." He said, "Then kneel here, Sir Gawain, and take off your helmet." And so Sir Gawain did. He took off his helmet, and he set it on his saddle, and then he knelt down on the ground, and he bared his neck. And the Green Knight took his great axe, and he lifted it into the air, and he swung it down, and he stopped it just before it hit Sir Gawain's neck. But Sir Gawain, he was waiting for such a blow, and he flinched. And the Green Knight said, "Ah, Sir Gawain, for shame! I did not flinch when you swung at me. Are you to be so cowardly then?" And Sir Gawain said, No, I am not a coward. I am not a coward. I cry your pardon. I shall not flinch the next time. Swing again." And so the Green Knight lifted up his axe, and he swung again, and this time he stopped it just before it hit Sir Gawain's neck. And Sir Gawain did not move. And the Green Knight said, "Ah, well then, you did not flinch that time. Very well done." And Sir Gawain looked up at the Green Knight, and he was beginning to be a little bit angry, for he felt that the knight was playing with him. And he said, "Sir Knight, stop playing with me and swing away. Swing your axe, man. Strike your blow." And so the knight lifted up that axe again, and he swung it down at Sir Gawain's neck. And this time he did not stop it entirely, but rather pulled it back, so that it did not hit Sir Gawain square on the neck, but just nicked his neck, and the blood drops began to flow and to stain the snow just there. And Sir Gawain jumped up, and he picked up his sword and his shield, and he said, "Ah, you have struck your blow. Now do not strike another, or I shall strike back." And the Green Knight laid his axe on the ground, and he said, "Nay, nay, Sir Gawain. Nay, it is well. You have stood the test. You have taken your blow, and I am satisfied. The knights of King Arthur are not cowards. I struck you thrice, or I swung thrice, on purpose, Sir Gawain, for you see, the first swing, the one that did not touch you, was for the first night you stayed in my castle, and my wife gave you a kiss, and you gave it back to me. And the second swing that did not strike you was for the second night when you stayed in my castle, and my wife gave you a kiss, and you gave it back to me. And the third strike, Sir Gawain, the third strike, well, I did not kill you, for my wife gave you 2 kisses, and you gave them both back to me. But I did cut you, for she gave you too a girdle which is now round your waist, and which you did not tell me about, and did not give back to me." And Sir Gawain was very ashamed then, for he knew that he had not acted truly as a knight should. And he took off the girdle, and he threw it in the snow, and he said, "Take it then. I am shamed. I should not be called knight. I broke my word." And the Green Knight, who now began to turn back into Sir Bersilac, said, "Nay, Sir Gawain, all is forgiven, for you took your blow, and you did your penance." He picked up the girdle, and he said, "Take this, please, as a gift from me and my lady wife." And Sir Gawain said, "Sir Bersilac, I wish to know, why were you the Green Knight? Why did you come and challenge me? Why did you test me so at your house?" And Sir Bersilac said, "Well, I have been under the power of Morgan Le Fay, the sorceress, and it was she that made me to be the Green Knight, and sent me to Camelot to challenge Arthur and his knights, and prove that they were not the brave and strong men that they said they were, but you have proven that they are. And I spoke with my wife, and I had her try to tempt you and give you the kisses, and it was a test to see if you were truly a good knight and could be true to your vows. And you have passed both tests, and now, since you have passed the test of Morgan Le Fay, I am freed from the spell that I was under. And I thank you quite heartily. Please come back to my castle with me, and celebrate the new year with us." And Sir Gawain said, "I cry your pardon, Sir Bersilac, but I have been gone from Camelot for far too long, and now that I have stood the test and have passed it, I shall return to King Arthur and his court, and tell them all of the things that have happened here. And since you give it me freely, I shall take this green girdle that you offer, and I shall keep it as a reminder to be humble always. And if ever I am becoming proud, I will look at this, and it will remind me that I am not the perfect knight that I hoped to be." And so he took that girdle, and he tied it across his breastplate, and he mounted on his horse, and he said farewell to Sir Bersilac, and he rode back to Camelot. And when Sir Gawain arrived back at Camelot, They were all greatly overjoyed and very surprised to see him, for they had not expected to see him again. And King Arthur bade him come in and tell them the story, and Sir Gawain told them all of the story, even his own failing to fulfill his vow and give everything to Sir Bersilac. And King Arthur told Sir Gawain that he had indeed now proven himself to be one of the great knights of the Round Table, and he said that those who were good and pure of heart should always wear a green girdle as a badge of honor. And so Sir Gawain lived out his days as one of King Arthur's knights, always remembering to be humble and remembering his battle against the Green Knight. And that is the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight from the King Arthur Tales of England. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back and join us again on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Time. We will have another story for you here from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. Have a great New Year, everybody. Bye.